email marketing is something that we hear at Cohart like all the time is complicated and confusing. A lot of people don't know how to send emails, how often to send emails, what to say. And when we were trying to figure out how we should approach the topic, Andy, Artie, what do you prefer, Andy? Do you want me to call you Andy in this case, or?
Yeah, you can call me Andy. It's
Okay,
fine.
okay, I'm gonna call you Andy now. Andy and Julian both have email strategies, which we've all seen on our team firsthand, have been extremely effective for them to not only sell their art, but to build up a really engaged collector community and to tell their stories. And I think, again, email is this channel that might feel a little antiquated sometimes, but it's actually really, really valuable, especially with something like art, because people can think about it, they can digest it, they can really read your newsletter and feel connected to you. So we're really excited about the conversation. And I'll start by kind of introducing both of them, and then we'll talk about each of their stories and then kind of dive into some of their techniques and best practices. So I'm gonna unspotlight myself. I don't even know if it matters because this is the main screen. But yeah, kind of talked about this again, just kind of circling back on these 4 points. Newsletters are important, and I think it's hard to know how to approach them. So the goal of the conversation today is to give you a little bit of inspiration from people that are experts and that have built up their own strategies. Again, a newsletter should ultimately feel like it's coming through your story and through your own lens. And so I think in today's conversation, you'll be able to, again, get more inspiration and feel like you have some ideas for how you could approach your next email marketing newsletter. Again, everything's about being authentic and ultimately, like as you hear from Julian and Andy, hopefully you get some personal ideas about what will resonate for you and with your audience. So we want to start with a poll. If you send a newsletter, please drop something in the chat. We also wanted to see if anyone has websites. If you have a website or a newsletter, like just drop in the chat. Andy and Julian will kind of be going through the chat as we talk here today, and we'll try to tailor the conversation towards the natural organic convo as it sparks in the chat. So feel free to drop anything in there, and we'll jump into Andy's intro. So Andy, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Sweet. So yeah, Andy, AKA my pseudonym is Artie Sandstone. It's funny as I'm looking at the screen with me popping up and down. It's so humbling and awesome to get to do this with you all. It's a real pleasure. Kendall and the team have done an amazing job with Cohart, and so really excited to do this. It's funny being called a master class. I don't know that Julian and I would consider ourselves to be masters. I think the whole frame is we're all a bunch of amateurs doing our best. And but that being said, I think one of the themes you're going to see in here today is really the importance in art of telling a story. So I think I'm going to just kick it off right now with a story, and then Kendall, whoever's controlling, maybe go to Artie. That'll be easier for me to just. I don't need the slide, but looking at myself popping up and down with my ADHD is killing me. So I'm going to start with just a quick story. This summer, I had an amazing opportunity. I live in Boulder now with my two girls, 9 and 12, Haven and Cece, and my wife, Jody, of 20 years. And we went away for about 5 weeks to Costa Rica. And it's the first time like I've really slowed down in life and gone and done an adventure with my family. And we were staying at a friend's house for the whole time we traded houses. But the reality is on one of the weekends, we went to a town in Costa Rica where the volcano is, Arenal. It's this town called La Fortuna. And at one moment, we were driving in the car. I'm driving, shirt off, no shoes, which is my Costa Rican outfit. Okay, less is more. And we're driving on this back street, and all of a sudden, Jody in the front seat next to me was like, "Dude, this street and this place right there looks like somewhere you would have stayed." And I looked, and then I stopped the car. I was like, "No fucking way. I stayed at this place 20 years ago. This exact place. It was like a universe. Like how, and she'd never been there with me. And it was this funky little rundown hostel. And I took it as a compliment that she thought I would stay in a shithole. And it's this rundown little hostel called Gringo Pete's. And I said to my kids, I was like, you won't believe this. 20 years ago, I really was here. I was wearing these like same black shorts with different board shorts, but the same concept, no shoes, no shirt. And I showed up there with a buddy. There was no rooms left except for one. And so, or no beds. And so Gringo Pete, who was running the reception, basically said, hey man, you can crash on my, upstairs balcony if you want under my laundry for $6. And I was like, hell yeah, sure. So I said to my kids, do you want to go see it? So we knocked on the door and the people that were there let us in, gave us a tour. We took pictures of where I actually stayed 20 years ago. And I started reflecting after that. And I was so proud to show my kids, like, we're staying in a beautiful house right now, but their dad stayed here and I'm still rolling up 20 years later, no shirt, no shoes, in shorts. I have so much wealth in terms of my family and what I've accomplished, and sure on the material side, but really in terms of like what I've accomplished since that point. But rolling up there 20 years later in the same outfit, just had me thinking about this less is more, mentality, and how, for how much I've changed and what I've accomplished, I've tried to stay grounded as a human. Why am I telling you this story? Because this is the type of story I tell in my newsletters. And it's one that I shared when I was out in Costa Rica, and I sold a piece off of it. I wasn't selling art at all. Did I mention that I was painting with no shirt and no shoes in my newsletter and show a picture of me painting? I did. And did somebody buy it because of this piece of literature? No. They bought it because it's somebody who gets all my newsletters. And for whatever reason, this one tracked the person to be like, hey, man, I'm ready for you to do a commission. Okay. So that's my story to kick it off. In terms of who I am, really briefly, 2 to 3 minutes is brief. From Miami, Florida, like I mentioned, ADHD, hyperactive, crazy kid, crazy person now. Kid was really hard for my divorced parents that were really young when they had me to handle me. So I got the boot from home when I was in 8th grade, and ended up going to a wilderness program in Idaho, into reform school, into boarding school, into doing really well in those programs, and just really connecting with myself and what was important, and ended up at the University of Florida. Having been from Miami, always wanted to come home and be a Florida Gator. And at that point, I knew I came from a family of entrepreneurs. Like, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't care what I did, but I wanted to be in charge. I wanted to lead, and I wanted to make an impact. At that same time, I also realized that I was an artist. Growing up, I always created these crazy characters and cartoons, but didn't really, know how to do it from an artistic perspective. And I was dating a girl at University of Florida for a short period of time, but she was an art major, and she was, doing an art project in my place one day, and it blew my mind. I took what she was doing, charcoal, and I've never stopped since 20 years later. In those 20 years, as I mentioned, entrepreneur, I graduated from college, went into a small tech company. We were really lucky and had some success, and were acquired after a couple years. Long story short, one of my mentors and one of our investors in a tech company was really successful in biotech, much older than me. He took a liking to me. And the last 17 years I spent in biotech, developing new therapies, most of them for the skin. One of our drugs we actually just got approved. It's for a disease called hyperhidrosis that we sold a few years ago. But I spent 14 years at 26 to 40 building a biotech company, taking it public, getting the shit kicked out of me, not really doing my, following my passion. My passion has always been art. While I was building that company, I was always doing art, on the side at nights and weekends. Finally, I got the courage in 2012 to start showing it. I took a bunch of my pieces to the heart of Wynwood in the Miami district, the arts district, if you all are familiar. And a gallery noticed me. I started selling my art. It was taking off, but I also had a business to run. I had investors, I put my life savings into that business. And so it wasn't the right timing until the last couple years when I had an opportunity to exit my business. And I'm now in Boulder, Colorado. I'm coming to you from my large studio gallery, and I'm living my dream right now. And it feels really good. And it feels really good to get to connect with you all and share my stories. So thank you. I'll turn it to Julian. Or should I do my process real quick? Or
Yeah, why don't you touch
I
quickly
guess
on
I
that?
can. I'll take one more minute here. Is
Yeah.
it was the reason I told you the story and then just gave you my story is I think our premise today and my goal with my newsletters, with my social media, with when I'm meeting with people is to tell authentic stories, is to be myself. And that enables me to bring my art to life. So sometimes I'm telling stories about what I'm going through in life. Sometimes I'm telling stories about the art that I made. Sometimes I'm doing both, but I'm putting out newsletters that each time have a theme. The frequency is 2 times per month, minimum, very consistent. And consistency is key on all this stuff. I saw one of the initial comments that came in is like, I do it, but I should do it more. Like having a schedule, having a cadence is hard for artists. I know that, but this is a game of consistency. And I'd say for me, the most important elements is being authentic in these newsletters. Was an artist, I think we all know when you show your art, when you compose it, it takes courage to put it out there. So just taking a little bit more courage and just sharing what's behind, because ultimately people are not really buying the art, they're buying the artist. So
And then
I'll take it to Julian.
one more thing before we jump to Julian, there's one more slide on this too, Andy. I think you do a really good job with the hook. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
I do. I just needed a sip of water, so that I kept kicking it to Julian. So yeah, I'd say, a couple of things. One, when I said a theme's important. So my theme of my newsletter is the Sandstone Smile. Okay. And what that means is I'm not selling art, I'm selling smiles. How do I get people to smile? Through my positive vibes, through my storytelling, through my artwork. That's my jam. So every artist will have their own, should have their own unique voice and style. Mine is about positivity, bright colors, etc. In terms of a newsletter, what I would say is having a hook is super important. So I'm always leading in the subject is something, it's not like save the date. It's like, you know, it's coming to 305, woohoo, Miami Vice, something if I'm doing an art show there, which I am. This one specifically, the subject line was the best part of waking up is gratitude in your cup. For those that are old enough to remember the Folgers commercials, this is a perfect example. So I want people to stop and actually open it. And then in terms of once you get them to open it, this is a longer one. I err on the side of less is more, like my board short situation. But people only have so much attention. So you want to grab their attention and try to retain their attention. And so the other thing that is on this slide is, Julian will talk about too. I don't look at unsubscribes. So some of this is you have to have a thick skin, is that you're going to send this out to people, and some of your dear friends and family may unsubscribe, and don't take it personal. Just keep doing it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Andy, for that incredible kickoff. We're
Got it.
going to pass it to Julian, who's calling in from Portugal.
Hello. I'm Julian. I'm based in Florida in Fort Lauderdale, but I am in Portugal right now visiting family. And I'm still jet lagged. I just flew last night, so if I start slurring my words, I apologize. But I'm an abstract painter anyway, so I don't like communicating with words. So I was an engineer. I studied mechanical engineering in college. I worked as a corporate engineer for a couple of years, and then I realized that I hated my life in the corporate world, and that wasn't for me. And I was always really creative growing up. So then I started doing freelance photography, which was the first time I started making money with my creative side. And that blew my mind that I could make money as a creative. This was like 8 years ago. And then that grew into my full-time income, the photography. I started video production as well. And then when COVID hit, I had started painting again as an adult. I say again because I grew up loving art, and then I stopped painting like all of my 20s because they said you can't make money as an artist. So I just disregarded it as anything worthwhile to do with my life. And selling my first painting during COVID also blew my mind because now I could sell something that was way more fun than photography and came naturally. And so the rest is history. The last 5 years, I've been growing my art business, phasing out photography and video clients. And now for the last 2 years, I've been only doing art. And as much as I can, I like to share stories and insights and tips and tricks with other artists and really support other people in doing what they want with their lives.
Awesome. So now talking a little bit about your process.
All right. So similar to Andy, my main goal is to build any connection with me. And the foundation of that goal is if someone's going to buy a painting, they need to be, this is my theory, they need to be emotionally connected with that painting, with the artist, with the mission. It's all about the emotional connection. And that's not, I do most of my front end marketing, like the way most people first hear about me is on Instagram. And I believe that they're not going to really create an emotional connection with my art, me, my message in like 10-second reels and swiping through photos. They need to spend more time with me. So I think of the email as that spot where people are spending more time with me and learning more about my message, my art, my mission, me personally, and then eventually they'll want to buy. So that's kind of the root of everything in my email. Like I want to be sharing stories, sharing authentically, sharing things I learned. Kind of like what Andy said, like I don't really send update emails. Everything for me needs to be story based. Or mission based. It's not always a story like I went here and this happened. Sometimes it's just I believe this and I'll just rant like passionately about a topic. And honestly, those emails are the ones that I get a bunch of people replying like, I love this. Thank you so much for sharing. Stuff like that. So the type, I try to stick to weekly. Um, I have a welcome email series. So yes, when people join my email list, they get 7 emails in 7 days, and each email is a chapter in my story. So that's in my theory for that is right when they join, they start to learn about me and my story because they likely joined without knowing much about me. They probably saw my art on Instagram or they met me at an event. So that welcome series is an opportunity for them to get to know me, my story, and who I am. And then my newsletter, my email. To be fair, I don't really think of it as a newsletter because I think of newsletters as they contain like bits of news and updates. My emails are more stories, and I just call them emails in my mind. But I do always include a link at the end or some sort of CTA, a call to action. And it's not always like selling something like buy my art, but it's sometimes like this one that's on the screen. See my updated catalog of works. That's the call to action for this one. And format. I used to do text only, but then Andy actually, like a couple weeks ago, we were talking and he was like, "You don't do images, you're an artist." And I was like, okay, maybe he has a point. So now I'll include usually just one image at the end or 2 images. That's mostly because uh I follow one like email marketing guy, Ben Settle, and he's like adamant about not using images because of deliverability. He's scared that images make him load slower and will hurt deliverability. And personally, I love learning about writing and how to write engaging copy and the subject line and everything. So I kind of use it as a challenge for me to improve my writing and not rely on images. So that's it. That's why I don't use images. We can go
Awesome.
to the next slide.
And then, yeah, just to kind of kick off this one, I think, Andy had talked about having his mission about like how his art is meant to make people feel. And I think you do the same thing, Julia. And like you guys both have real clarity in terms of what that looks like. And then you communicate that over and over again, like the more that you receive that message.
Yeah, and it feels repetitive to me, but for the viewer, it's not repetitive. It's very okay to be over and over. And then the consistency piece too of being repetitive. I just had someone a couple of weeks ago bought a painting from me, and he said he's been on my list for 2 years. I've never heard of him. I had no idea who this guy was, but for 2 years he was just sitting there reading my emails, and then finally was like, "All right, I'm ready to buy a painting." So
And I would
you
just
never
add
know.
to that, Julian, and that's why the consistency is so important. And that happens to me all the time where uh, I'll have I mean, in the last few paintings I've sold have come from this. I also don't love the newsletter, vernacular. Uh, but where people are like 20th, 30th, 50th newsletter that just you're in front of them. And so when they finally need a piece of art or the moment's right, and so by being in front of them and connecting with them and then you being vulnerable, it creates this trust. And then whether they know you or not, they now feel like they know you. And if they really know you, then they love you even more, like some of my friends who are buying the art. But if you're not there, if you don't show up and connect with them, and it's really hard to connect with people on Instagram deeply. It's so superficial and they're looking at it amongst a million other things. And yes, when you're checking an email, there's a million other things too, which is why brevity, it can be helpful. But that consistency, to me, these emails allow you to go a little bit deeper with the people that actually are starting to care and be your followers.
And I have a question for both you guys. I mean, if you like this quote here, Julian, like picking your newsletter over your socials, like how are you collecting all these email addresses, right? Because that's another piece of,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're doing something on social and you're pushing someone instead of saying buy my art, it's like join my newsletter. Like how do you make that as seamless as possible? And like how else are you thinking about collecting email?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question because there's no point of sending emails if there's no one to send it to. Um, so the way I think about it is I'm selling a luxury goods product, and people who are buying luxury goods products like to feel special. So the way I position my email list is I call it my insider list. So Mauricio Portu asked, what do we write on the website? On my website, it says, join my insider list and you'll instantly receive my PDF catalog of available works. And you'll also be the first to know about my new art, upcoming events, and exciting projects. So I'm positioning as the reward, the reason they would join is because they're going to be the first to know about things. They're joining my insider list and they're going to instantly receive a PDF of my available work, which people love receiving things, even if it's a digital PDF. So that's how I think about that. And then when I post on Instagram a lot, I will direct people to my email list if they want to find out more about paintings or my art or my available work. And I also always tell people email me if you have any questions. So I try to keep everything in the email.
And
Andy?
then maybe Kendall, I'll piggyback on that with respect to where do you get the email list from? So I can't see everybody, but going out into the Zoom universe here, put your hand up if you know more than 50 people. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, everybody should have their hands up. Okay. Of those 50 people, perhaps you have their emails. If it's 100 people. So what I did when I was starting this is I went into my email and I had some lists, but for the most part, I just went in my database and I would just A through Z, typing in A and it like auto pops. And it took me several hours to do this, but I ultimately, when I started my email list, I probably had 600 qualified emails of people that I thought that I could introduce what I'm doing, giving them an opportunity to be on it and to unsubscribe if they want, letting them know what I'm doing. Because that first one that you're going out with, I'm taking the liberty of adding people. Okay. And so by doing that, you want to make it clear that they can get off if they want to. That's my approach to doing it. Everybody has different philosophies. And so for me, I started from the ground up and that's the way I do it. In terms of how do I continue to build it? Every time I do a show, sometimes I'll do giveaways on social media. I did one, a couple months ago for a print, and I got 100 new signups. It was incredible. Last night I did an opening, not an opening, but I participated in an art walk in downtown, and I got 10, new emails. These are very warm leads. These are people that, we asked them, did they want to be on it? And I now have 10 people that I'm gonna connect with. And of these, I look at a few of these names. There's a couple people here that were like really interested in asking price about pieces. And so I now have an ability to connect deeply with them. In an hour or 10 minutes talking to them, it's really hard to do that. And I think what we all know as an artist is you do these art shows, people ask you, did you sell art? It's almost impossible to sell, a luxury good of 5, 10,000 in one night. Anybody who asks that question, it's a dumb fucking question because it's so hard. But how am I going to sell art? Well, I'm going to do it through this. And I'm going to do it to the lady who's now come to my gallery 3 times in the last month. She hasn't bought a piece yet, but she's coming and getting to know me. She's going to buy pieces. I know she is. She's on my newsletter, on my emails. She's on my social media. So to me, this whole thing is you got to start from somewhere, grab your contact list, find out your authentic voice, and just it becomes a piece to the puzzle. But having all these websites, which it seems like a lot of people have in the comments, without a call to action to it, it becomes that much. It's like, why do you even have a website? Because it's really hard for people to search and find your website.
Completely. All right, well, this is awesome. It makes total sense. Even for me, writing emails with our cohort investors, I started with our list from the ground up, and it was always like just consistency, write down everyone's contact and just keep it all in one place. And I think that's really important. And it can feel like just an email, but to your point, Andy, it's all a warm lead, which is super important to be mindful of. Okay, just kind of zooming out a little bit. I mean, we've talked at a very high level about some strategies, but core pillars. I think, talking about some of these specifically, like maybe a couple use cases and what this means for both of you. What advice you would give to folks in terms of how to tell the story?
Yeah, I can go first. So if you put yourself in the shoes of a collector, or if you've ever been to an art collector's house, you may have realized that they love to talk about their art. If you ask them about this piece, they'll tell you the story about the artist, blah, blah, blah. So kind of the way I think about it is I'm just giving future collectors ammunition that they can tell their friends in the future once they have my art. So these like some of these subject lines of these are my emails, you can see a lot of them, it's kind of that, like it has to be interesting. The way I think of subject lines specifically is they need to capture enough interest and give the reader a reason to open it that will either like educate them, inspire them, teach them something. And it can't be like too much about I mean they're boring updates. It can't just be like new show coming soon or like my new series. I try to do more like story based and belief based stuff.
What does the belief piece mean, Julian, to you?
So to me that means I believe in pursuing your life on your own terms, looking inside of yourself to discover who you truly are and making choices based on that. So when I share those beliefs, other people who agree with those beliefs are more likely to resonate with me and want to stick around and keep consuming my emails and my content and eventually buy my art. And when I share those beliefs, I'm kind of pairing those beliefs with my art and my brand. So now when someone buys my art, it's like it's part of the brand of Julian Castro's art. Especially like my art is abstract, so you can't really look at it and be like, oh, that's a landscape of mountains. I love mountains. Like the meaning of the abstract art, I believe it's in the eye of the beholder. Like they can see whatever they want, but also I can create meaning of what I want these things to mean.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think, Andy, you do the, again, same thing with the spirit of your message. Just like whenever I read your emails, I feel good. And I think that's something that you do with just like the ethos and the narrative and the tone.
100%. For me, the whole thing is my mission is to make people smile with my art, make myself smile first and laugh. That transcends to people. That's the approach I take with my emails. And with emails, sometimes there are updates. Like I have a big, exciting show coming up in October, and I sent it out yesterday. It was a catchy subject, catchy header, big, bright visual, kind of a save the date. Um, but it was an update, but it was still bringing my positive vibes. And sometimes there will be updates, but I'm also telling a story that like I'm coming back to Miami because it was so successful and I'm doing it in a unique place that brings curiosity. And so I'm still really engaging with the audience. But I think the reality is being comfortable telling stories and being your authentic self. And people buy authenticity, and people, like Julian said, they love knowing the story behind the art and the artist. That's oftentimes more important than the art itself. They still have to love the art, right? But if you can get them to love you, that's power.
Mhm. And there's a really interesting question here about how it takes a long time to craft an email, and with tools like AI, are you guys using those? And maybe I'll just jump to the next slide as we talk about this, because I think
Yeah.
this is also
Oh,
not just the content of the writing, but like the style that you're approaching,
yeah.
like how much
Well,
time do you have for that?
yeah, so this is a good visual. So a couple things. One is, you know, we've already highlighted, consistency. So that is just being ruthless about it. In terms of AI, I'm as a, innovative thinker in person, I'm a big fan of AI and using it to be efficient. I've got a lot of different things and business ventures on my plate, and so I'd like to be really efficient. So I do write my newsletters. I write them now by talking to AI and letting the AI distill it down. And then I go in and then it's all, everything that comes out feels totally authentic to me. But as you can tell, I like to tell stories and I can talk. And so I will sit there, and my style is I'll write it and then AI will clean it up, dial it in. And it's been super helpful. Before AI a year ago, I would just do it myself. I make an investment every month in having a marketing consultant that I have, and kind of an art marketing manager that I have on retainer. It's an investment. I know that's not for everybody. For me, that works because I've got other things I'm working on, and consistency is so important that I know myself that I might, not be as religious if I'm not making that investment. But I'm the one driving the train. I come up with all the themes. I'm on top of it. I'm writing them. I'm dialed in, and uh, I do use AI as a tool. I think it's a tremendous tool for posts, but I'm writing it, but I'm usually just talking and doing a whole dictation, and then we'll distill it down back and forth over 7, 8, 9, 10 cuts, and you get a good visual here for on each of these newsletters. If you look at the title one is Sky High, Sky High. What does that mean? Okay. If you say paint, I'll paint with you. That's a David Bowie. Elevated, it's like, what does that mean? And was that piece. And, and it will shine gold. I guess the subject on that one was, lead with your heart. So this just gives you a sense of my, style in terms of hooking people. And then my format, bright colors, some text, and various images and pictures. I covered a lot there, so.
Yeah. Julian, you want to talk about AI? I'll go to this slide as well. Curious what your
Yeah.
thoughts are on that. And then also there was one other question that I thought would be relevant for you to answer, was just getting people from Instagram specifically to sign up.
Yeah. So The only way I'm using AI for my email list is every morning I journal morning pages from the Artist's Way, if anyone knows that. And so I do not want to use AI to write my emails for me because I genuinely enjoy the process of writing them. So why would I outsource that? So actually what I do sometimes is I'll often write the emails by hand first thing in the morning when I'm journaling. If I'll have an idea or something, I write it. And then lately I've been taking pictures of it and giving that to AI, and it can read my handwriting and then it'll transcribe it for me. And then I just copy paste that and proofread, edit, make some changes. And it's good to go. As far as like how I saw someone ask how long does it take? It takes a long time. Um, I think it's just practice. You get faster with speed. I can bust out an email in like 5-10 minutes now. Thought I heard the door. So yeah, I will also sometimes use AI for content ideas and like topic ideas based on my stuff, but I personally enjoy the writing process, so I don't use AI. What I do, okay, this is a side quest, and then I'll come back to the adding people from Instagram. I do steal ideas a lot from other artists, from other brands, other companies, both in the content that I post and the emails. So on Instagram, if I see an artist like and I really like their style of marketing, I follow them and I have no shame in stealing ideas of content. And then I'll also join their email list just to see how they're using email. And then I have no shame in stealing ideas from their email list either. And that's a great strategy if you're having trouble coming up with what to send and what to do. As far as getting people from Instagram to sign to my email newsletter, the sign up to get a PDF of my available works has worked really well for me because people love to get PDFs and they love to receive something. And then I've also had with limited success, but I haven't really promoted this too well. So that's why it hasn't worked. If I have like something coming up, like it releases this Sunday and there'll be a limited amount available, that has also helped to get people onto my list. Like I did a drop once of like 30 pieces of something, and I was like, sign up by Monday, and then it'll be made available on Monday only to my email list. So you have to be on my email list to get that. And yes, you can steal all of my ideas, join my email list, and I have no problem with you stealing my ideas.
Likewise, steal them and just make them better. What I would say, just parlaying on what Julian said, is for Instagram, I'd say the most success I've had on Instagram, and so I'll probably do another one soon, was a print giveaway. It was incredible. I had like 100 people said in order to get the print to be ordered into the contest, you had to be a subscriber of my newsletter. And I was shocked. I mean, people went bananas. I mean, the post did tremendously well. I boosted it then a little bit because it was doing so well. And it was, it was incredible. I got so many more followers. People were tagging people, but what I wanted, I really cared about newsletter subscribers, and I had, 100 news subscribers. And so I look at the cost of that, maybe it cost me a couple $100 to do, 5 prints and to send them out. And that was a really good investment for me because I have 100 new people that, the newsletter is less about quantity, it's about quality. And so I had somebody say with the unsubscribes, like let people make it clear that they can unsubscribe. Always have a button. Do a cleaner, every once in a while to say reminder, unsubscribe if you don't like this. But people will unsubscribe. Don't look at it, but focus on the people who are still subscribed and who's opening and have an engaged audience. And you'll see, and you'll get feedback. You'll see how many people open it, and that's a good litmus test.
Yeah, I think the hard part is that when you're, and this is kind of what this slide's about, but when you're being vulnerable, right? Like, and you're telling your story and then you get an unsubscribe, like that can feel like a dagger, right? But I think you've got to start by putting yourself out there and then feel that success story manifest at least once or twice. And then that's going to continue to reaffirm and, curate your audience in the right way. And it's kind of just inevitable, as part of the process.
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings, it's not on here, but what somebody else thinks about me is none of my business.
Mm.
And having that thick skin as an artist and entrepreneur, who cares? I mean, it's easy to care, but that unsubscribe. All right, so that's one less person. So it's their loss. They're too busy. You know, I had somebody send me this email that I wrote the most beautiful piece, and it was like, won't get into the details of it, but it was a beautiful piece of art and it was a beautiful story about it and it related to the terror attack that just happened in Boulder. And this dude just was like, this is the second time I've asked you to take me off the list. And I'm so sorry to like be, if people have that view, that's their view. Take them off, let them unsubscribe. It's all good. Onwards. Just keep
Yeah.
doing it.
And then
Yeah,
I think
every email I send has at least one unsubscriber.
Yeah, I have multiple because I now have, you know, 4,000 people, you know, that I built over time on the list, and I just trimmed that back from a lot of people that weren't opening because I want people to open it. So I just got rid of everybody who's not opening. If you didn't read it in the last, 2 months, I just did a huge cleansing to be focused on the people. But I always have unsubscribes. Every newsletter, there's an unsubscribe. It's okay.
Yeah.
I think we covered this, pretty well, leaning into connection and emotion for sure. So I think we could go to the next one. I think that and I covered the sandstone smile, so we're good there.
I think we're in our final two slides between the two of you. I guess before we jump to this one, actually, I have one question is this idea of having your buyers refer other buyers or even like text-based marketing, like the context in which people are receiving these stories being on their like by themselves on their email is very different than like something popped into your phone or a friend sending it to you. Like, do you guys think about it as just a one-to-one conversation you're having with your buyer, or do you want them to share it with their friends? Like, do you think about other channels like texting, or do you just try to keep it more intimate in that email inbox?
I
Julian?
do, as far as the newsletter or like marketing to many people at once, I do only email. I don't do text marketing. I feel like that's more for like consumer brands like clothing and stuff. I don't know. I don't see any luxury brands doing text marketing, so I stay away. I also personally don't enjoy receiving text marketing, so I don't really want to do something that I wouldn't want to receive myself either. But I do enjoy opening certain people's emails, so I don't mind doing that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, same. No text marketing for me. And yeah, listen, as people start buying the art and connecting, they share it, and for sure. And I don't know if people are forwarding my emails to other people. That's great if they are. But yeah, I'd say, a lot of the word of mouth comes in the sharing is when I'm doing art shows and when I'm art exhibitions where people bring other people. And when people purchase the art, you have a built-in referral system because the art's now on display, as a billboard in somebody's house.
Mhm. Totally.
Um, I have one more thing to add because I saw someone asked about collectors who are hesitant to sign up to email list. I have a separate manual list of people who emailed me directly inquiring about specific paintings or people that I meet, for example, at shows or in my day-to-day that are interested about my art and specific paintings. And I'll like touch base with that list probably like every 2 or 3 months, kind of following up manually. And there's like 30 people on there. And those
Yeah.
are like individual emails because those are, to me, they're like hot, like they're quite interested, and to me it's worth it.
Yeah. And I'll just add on to that. I have the same thing, a little bit different, but I have a collector's list that I actually started a couple months ago. I didn't steal this from Julian, but maybe through the ethosphere I did, through the universe. But yeah, I have a collector's only list that I now, they're called Sandstonians off of my Sandstone name. And they're, when I'm releasing a new piece, I'll go to them, VIP things. And so I've been, leaning into that list. And it was really cool to put that together because I realized, how many collectors I have now. And it's really humbling.
Awesome. Well, we have the two final like zoom out slides, which I think, we've talked about throughout the course of the conversation, but I think just this idea of, selling the story is what sells the art. Like that's a really important reminder. And then from Julian as well, like the artist personality, right, is what's going to drive the value and the connection to the work itself. So I think both of those are really great to end the presentation. And now we can dive into the Q&A. So I'll stop sharing this. That way you guys are spotlit and bigger than the prez. And then we have one question off the bat, but just finding a marketing consultant. Andy, you mentioned that you used one. How'd you find the person? What did you look for? How frequently are you working with them?
Yeah, I started with one who was a big influencer, and it was more giving me guidance, and it was expensive, and it was taking a lot of my time to do it. And I realized that I don't love doing the physical posts, and I don't necessarily love writing, which is why I use AI. I like talking though, and speaking and sharing my story. So I actually do write my own things, but I just speak them, which is really helpful. I ended up, because I wanted a marketing person that was going to be religious about taking my ideas and just posting it, and knowing the algorithms and knowing the science and helping me set the newsletter and do flyers and whatever else. And so I found that person like Julian. I stole it from somebody else. I saw an artist in my community that was on my feed that has excellent marketing and a professional photographer, and I found out who was this person. And this happens to be a person that represents a few professional artists, and worked out an arrangement that works for both of us, and that was really helpful for me. So I would, when you see artists online, that if you're looking for somebody, there's other ways that you can search it online, but for me, looking at other artists and what they're doing, and a lot of people are, if it looks pretty professional, footage, they might be working with somebody that's helping them, and you can always ping them or look for, site references.
Yeah.
Julian, about you?
Julian studied marketing, so you're your own expert in that capacity.
Oh,
So
you cut out. What was that?
I just said you studied marketing, so you are your own expert. But do you have any thoughts on marketing consultants? And
Yeah, I haven't really hired anyone yet for art, but I do have a accountability group. We meet every Monday, and it's me and three friends, and two of them are copywriter marketers, like full time, and then the other guy is a startup founder. And we basically talk about marketing and like kind of share, here's what I've done, blah blah blah, and give each other tips. So we're constantly like giving each other feedback on our stuff and getting support in that way. And
Yeah.
like all the books that I read are marketing books. I just happen to enjoy market, like I love the psychology of it. So I know a lot
And
of artists do not like marketing, but I also think there's some like limiting belief to that, because if I think it's possible to learn to like it in your own way. Oh, this is really important. I believe is I think Andy said it in the beginning, like what worked for him may not be what works for you. And that's what I have found with all artists. The way that works for them to market is going to be uniquely what works for them. Um, so there is a form of marketing your art that I'm sure will be enjoyable to you.
correct. And I would just add that uh, you can't, when I talk about having help on marketing, it's not on the authenticity, and it actually comes to the artist, I believe, to the person. So where I'm getting help is really on the administrative side, almost like that was going to spend the 30 minutes to take. I capture most of my footage. The stories that I'm telling are my stories. So I haven't yet found anybody that could do that for me. So I don't outsource kind of I want to say the genius, but like my authenticity. That's me. It's not my zone of genius to do the posting, and I don't have the time for it. I have other things with my art business and life that I want to accomplish. So I'm making an investment, and there's a trade-off to that. If I didn't, I now know enough about those things. I've learned a lot from having the training that I could do it, but I don't know that it's my zone right now. And so I'm willing to make that investment, and it's paid off. It's hard. I feel like I could do all those posts. I've really learned Instagram in the last 2 years, which I didn't know it. I was running my public company. I now understand it. But whatever we're doing as a team is working, but it's hard to outsource on the social media side and on the newsletter your own content, because we're the artists, we're making the art, and we're telling the story. So I would be, if you do look for, if it's a bandwidth issue and you want somebody, I think finding that somebody to tell your story the way you would tell it I feel like that's a tough one. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but that's a harder ask than something more administrative where somebody really understands the algorithms and the posting and wants to spend 30 minutes to craft a post.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of using AI to even help you put your story on paper in a different way, whether you're talking to it or Julian, you're uploading photos of your journal. Like, I think that's really relevant as well as having a space. And that could also be a person where you're able to kind of fine tune your own craft and your brand messaging, because that's probably like the core that you've got to start with. And if you're still figuring out what that is, it's probably the most important thing to focus on. There's a question from Becky, which I think is really interesting, just in terms of the production time spent recording videos. Like, are you blocking your calendar, so that you're just like spending time shooting content in bulk? How do you think about allocating time with, documentation of the work and getting marketing assets together across all the different other things you have to do as an artist?
Julian?
I almost always am filming myself while I work, like while I paint. And then I will set time aside to film myself talking about the story of those pieces, like whenever I finish a piece or a series. And then I'll use the footage of me painting over me talking about it. And then as far as other reels, I do also do them randomly if I have ideas or if I see something. Either I'll have an idea like, oh, I want to do that reel or I want to talk about something, or I'll see something online and be like, oh, that looks fun. I'll do something like that. So then I'll also randomly create reels like that. My mantra for work days during the week is paint and post. So every day, I don't do this every single day, but my goal every day is to paint and post. So I paint a little and then I post a little. So that's kind of how I balance my time. And when I mean post, it doesn't always end up in a post, but it's time spent working on marketing. Maybe that's filming or editing. But every day I try to paint and post because those are the two most important things that lead to art sales.
Yeah. Different mantras, but the same result. And for me, I'm capturing everything I'm doing. So when I'm painting, I'm capturing, and then I typically, with new pieces that are going to go on my website and to talk about them, I'll have my marketing person who's a professional photographer. It's really why I have him, is to come and help just create this excellent photography, and then we'll talk about pieces. So we'll, in an hour or two, we just did it the other day, in an hour, we probably created a month worth of content for 4 different pieces, how we revealed them, different. What I would say in terms of what are our thoughts on reels and videos, I now have a lot of data on and this is why that email marketing I think is so important, is if I post a piece just on Instagram, a new piece, very rare that I get great IG algorithm engagement. It's less and less now. If it's just a new piece of art, nobody gives a shit. But if it's anything with me in it, telling a story, something heartfelt, the stuff I put in my newsletter performs way better on Instagram than just when I've brought people on a process of a piece and I show the end result. I'm like, this is the best post I've made. It's a beautiful piece. Very little engagement. So I feel like that authenticity, the story behind the artist, plays really well on the reels and the videos. And yes, you still have to put final pieces up there because you just never know. But in terms of performance, I find the reels, the videos, and I'm seeing now just from from the marketing results that the carousel of images seem to be working really well too. So just having static images, but where you have 4 or 5 that seems to be performing pretty well too.
Awesome. We've got 1 minute left. So I think we'll drop in Julian and Andy's emails into the recap. So if anyone has additional questions, they've offered to chat, with you guys one-on-one or via email. So I just, again, think the world of both of them in terms of email marketers and just marketers in general. And I think as an artist, it's easy to, be nervous to talk about your work or to get out there. And I think it's really inspiring to hear success stories from artists that have done it well and that are selling a fuckload of art because they're telling their story. So I think that's really cool. And you guys are super inspiring. And thank you so much for being here. And I guess parting thoughts, like any advice for folks, there's 6 people that haven't started an email newsletter from that original poll. Like, how would you kind of guide people that are just getting started and people that need a little bit of confidence getting going?
It's like trying to get in shape after not being in the gym for a long time. Baby steps. Just do what you can handle now, and bit by bit, it'll get better and grow.
Yeah, just do it. It's, set goals. If you can put out goals that you think are reasonable and realistic and try to hold yourself accountable. But having that website and not having, another mechanism other than social media is just a missed opportunity to connect right now. So do it and have fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. Again, we'll send out a recap with the presentation and with the recording. If you have more questions, just let us know or feel free to hit up Julian and Andy individually. Lauren, I'll let you do the final wrap.
I just love that slide. You got to start somewhere. Like, that's such a great way to finish. Thank you both so much. As Kendall mentioned, I am going to send a recap email. I took a bunch of notes as well. So I'll summarize everything and I'll share contact details for Andy and Julian as well. And thank you both so much.